Hello. Today I will be returning to the French Tier 10 cruiser, the Henri IV. Now, this has been, of course, recently changed in the recent patch, so I'm once again going to take a look at how the ship performs. The two key changes, or well, the two only real changes, is that the speed boost that used to be plus 10% has been changed to plus 15%, and the cooldown has been significantly reduced. If you run the premium one, as you can see, it has a cooldown of only 2 minutes. So this, and of course it lasts, and actually cooldown of 1.5 minutes. It used to have 2 minutes, but it's been reduced to 1.5, and it lasts for 2 minutes. So the speed boost is quite good. And on the Henri IV in particular, if you run speed flag, like I do, I need to point out this is with the speed flag, you can get to 36.8 knots, and when you do pop your speed boost, you can even hit 42 knots. Sadly, of course, since it is a cruiser, you only really maintain this speed if you sail in very straight lines. If you start to maneuver, turn and such, you instantly drop to like 31, 32 knots. So the speed, of course, on a cruiser isn't that useful for actively avoiding shells in any way. It's useful for repositioning yourself on the map and mostly chasing down DDs or cruise or carriers or low HP targets. For things like that is useful, but for actual survivability, it doesn't really have any real impact, to be fair. The second significant choice is, of course, the main guns. These used to have insane air drag on especially the AP shells. This has, of course, been significantly toned down, which means that the AP actually has quite good penetration, Moskva levels of penetration, which is considered very good. It doesn't have the amazing angles of US AP, but it does have the penetration of Moskva AP, which makes it a lot better. They've also fixed the typo with the HE shells, which of course leads to HE shells being slightly more reliable. Now, is this actually enough to fix this cruiser? In my opinion, no. Starting off, we have, of course, the new AP. They got rid of all that insane drag on the shells, so the AP penetration is of course significantly better now. At long ranges, it still doesn't quite match up to the Moskva, which deals by far the best long-range AP damage, or has the best long-range AP penetration, but the new buffed AP shells are much more useful than the old ones, and you can really feel the difference. I mean, neither of the things I did here were that special. I could have done these things with multiple other cruisers, but the fact that this ship is finally capable of doing this is, of course, worthy of being highlighted. Now, while having the buffed guns has been very enjoyable, particularly because of course, with the penetration almost like Moskva's, and with hard-hitting shells, I've had a lot of fun just like pissing off Royal Navy cruisers. Because of course Moskva and this ship now are very good at shooting Royal Navy cruisers in smoke, because well, when you have accurate guns and you know how to shoot into smokes, well, you can punish Royal Navy cruisers quite hard, and I found it very amusing. However, this is when some of the uglier issues or bigger issues with this ship start rearing their heads. Now when the issue is no longer the guns simply not working, but the fact that guns work just fine, but you start having other issues. Now, well, triple citadel and smoke, that's always amusing, but the problem here starts showing itself. Not just the maneuverability, but the simple lack of damage. Now, I don't mean damage as in the alpha is terribly bad. The problem is the reload is so long. For example, this Moskva, that's something pretty much any cruiser could have done, but the difference is my reload takes so long that he has time to turn and angle before my next reload is ready, and I can only shoot as his superstructure because his bow would bounce it. And well, the ship is also not really tanky enough to be able to withstand any kind of fighting, and in general fighting against other cruisers. I tried to shoot his superstructure. I actually hit the bow, which of course tanks all the shells. My torpedoes do finish him off, but this is where we start seeing some of the fundamental issues with this ship. Now, the issue that particularly plagues the Henri is the lack of DPM. DPM meaning damage per minute. Now, you saw these Yuguma popped up. I had AP loaded. Because of the long reload, it's better to instantly just shoot. Even with expert loader, it's still probably better to shoot. But this kind of is an example of what happens when you face a DD, for example. I'm chasing down this DD, of course. I dodge his torps quite well, and I'm just continuing to chase him down because, of course, I want to kill him, and as a cruiser, you kind of want to hunt them down. My aim was pretty good. Dispersion didn't really let me hit more than 2 shells, though, and this happens quite often because, well, this happens to all cruisers. But the difference is, while other cruisers would be hammering this guy constantly with shells, breaking his engine and probably killing him, because of my insanely long reload, I only really get 2 volleys off, and he's already disappeared into the next smoke. And of course I have no radar, so I have no utility. There's an Edinburgh in there. That AP volley I just took, yep, this ship really can't take the hits. And I mean, even now when I switch to AP, just because you have Moskva AP doesn't mean that you have US normalization angles. So what's actually pretty amusing to see here, this Edinburgh is giving me a lot of broadside. I shoot him, and if you didn't notice, I only got 2 penetrations. My shells hit before those other shells, or was it torps, but I only hit 2 penetrations, and then I got 3 bounces. And someone else killed the Yugomo. And that kind of summarizes, like, this happens very often. You see a DD and you try to punish him as you can punish him in many other ships, but 15-second reload, that's with the reload perk. Without the reload perk, it's even worse. But I'm running with the reload perk and I still have a massive 15-second reload time. And it really is one of the major issues with this ship. Here's another example. I see the Grosse Kurfürst, he's eating torps, so I want to start fires on him. And I have very little success. Now, this isn't actually that surprising, because let me pull up the table here so you guys can see it. This table shows, of course, all the different tier 10 cruisers and their different values. Now, looking at the very far right, you can see fires per minute. And that's the Henri's fires per minute. It starts less than 7 fires per minute, which is by far the worst of any tier 10 cruiser. So if your hopes is to play this like a long-range HE spammer, then why would you play it instead of the Moskva or the Zao, which are both excellent at that? Both are fantastic long-range HE spammers, great fire starters. Why would you play this instead of them? And it's not just the fire starting capability, the HE DPM is god awful. It's 107k. Now if you load HE on a Grosse Kurfürst, on a goddamn battleship, you get like 117 or 118k DPM. So this ship actually deals less HE DPM than a Grosse Kurfürst. And that's of course ridiculous. And the AP DPM isn't any better. Even the AP salvo isn't special enough to justify it. I mean, your full salvo, if you land only citadels, does 3000 damage, 3600 damage more than Moskva. That's all the advantage you have. In return though, you deal 195k AP damage per minute compared to Moskva's over 300,000. So when you start looking at the actual stats, when you no longer have the excuse of just the guns being bugged, but they actually work as they should, but you start looking at the stats, you start realizing just how terrible this cruiser is at being a cruiser. It's nowhere, it doesn't have anywhere near enough damage to even compete with the rest of them. Nowhere near. It does not come close. And that's of course a massive, massive issue. And sadly, however, that's not the end of the issues, because it still has the very same issues that I highlighted in my previous commentary, which is of course the armor. 25mm bow, 25mm deck. It's not enough. It's simply not enough. Example, I know there's a North Carolina behind this island. I want to rush the North Carolina. I want to hunt him down. In any other cruiser, this would be a simple task. But, well, we see him. He shoots, I angle in, I angle perfectly, I don't give too much bow, I don't give too much broadside. All he does is hit my deck. 25,000 damage. If you look back on that clip, you can even watch it in slow motion, you'll notice that all the penetrations come on top of my ship. And it's so hard to enjoy the ship when you really struggle. You don't seem to bounce any shells really, because once again every battleship you face will be able to overmatch that 25mm armor. So even now, once again angled, another 10k. I'm lucky he didn't just straight up kill me. And you gotta remember, North Carolina is able to get better stealth than you do. he's able to get better concealment than you do. So those guys are literally going to be popping out of stealth and absolutely wrecking this ship. So yeah, there are still major issues here. So where exactly does this leave us? Well, we have 53.3k HP, but not really enough armor to really protect that HP. It's still significantly less than something like a Moskva has, and even the Des Moines. How much did the Des Moines have? The Des Moines has 50k, 50.6k, but in comparison, of course, the Des Moines gets a concealment of 10.6. Des Moines has slightly better armor, but it also gets 2 km better concealment. This 3k extra HP, of course, is nowhere enough to make up for this discrepancy. The guns, the penetration is nice, but ultimately, as I showed, the DPM is terrible. The DPM is downright awful. So, and this is, of course, you got to remember, I am running the reload module. I am building this ship exclusively to deal damage with the guns, and even then the DPM is garbage. So this is, of course, an issue. Either they can decrease the reload significantly, or they can increase the alpha damage of the shells. Now, personally, I would love to see them increase the alpha damage of the shells, because that would allow the Henry to retain an identity. It would be the slow reloading cruiser, but then on the other hand, it would have a really fearsome broadside. So it would give it a special identity among all the other cruisers because of this special feature. But that would of course mean that they would significantly have to raise the alpha damage. Like the HE shells need to deal something like 5k, and AP will have to deal like over 8k, almost 9k damage. Like you need to do that much damage per shell for the damage to be even close to the rest. Even with those increases, it still won't beat the rest, but at least it will get close. And that would be my preferred solution to these guns. But they can take the lazy way out and just give it a bunch of extra reload. It will make it more competitive and able to compete better with the others and make it more attractive as a choice or as an option. But that's, in my opinion, a fairly boring solution. And I mean, torpedoes, these torps, they were, as I said, they were great when you got them at tier 5, but at tier 10 these torps just don't deal enough damage. You only have 3 of them. They have a 90-second reload. I mean, it's meaning when you go YOLO, you'll have time to launch both sides once pretty much, and that's it. If you manage to survive in your YOLO for more than 1.5 minutes to reload your torps, then I'll be very surprised. But ultimately, the damage against something like a Yamato is just pitiful. And, well, even, I mean, let's Kurfürst, that it isn't even a particularly, is a battleship prone to, very vulnerable to torpedoes. Even that has 27%. And with 106k HP, it's not like the torps will really have a big impact on it. The AA on it is decent, but even when you build full anti-air range, as I've done here, meaning you go both AFT and you even slot the increased AA range module, you can only reach 7.5 km AA range. Now your air spotting is 8.2, meaning a carrier has 700 meters of spotting you and time to pull back his planes and save them from being shredded. And I mean, when you compare it to Des Moines, once again, 7.8 and 7.2, the buffer is 600 meters, and it's just, it doesn't really, once again, it doesn't have, it's something it loses out on again. Even having this somewhat decent anti-air loses out because of this issue. So yes, you can create AA bubbles. I mean, you can create a pretty big AA bubble with this ship, but it's not something really unique to the Henry, and it's just decent anti-air. And maneuverability wise, I mean, maximum speed is nice, and the top speed is the best. It's really nice when you pop your speed boost and you're able to do 42 knots, but ultimately it's not a survivability tool because you lose so much speed in turns. An 840 meter turning circle, I mean, Moskva has what, 760 meters? Des Moines has 770. I mean, even Zao, that's known for being clumsy, as an 840 as well. So once again, you're kind of at the back of the pack. What was Hindenburg's? 800, so even that is better. So you have the among the worst. It's shared with Zhao, you have the worst maneuverability. and rudder shift 9.5, and this is of course running the rudder shift module. And I mean, Zhao has what, 6.1? So yeah, never mind, you're not sharing the spot of the worst maneuverability. You are by far the worst maneuverable, tier 10 cruiser. Even the Hindenburg has faster rudder shift, I think. No, 9.7. So yeah, kind of shared with that, but it has a better turning circle. So, and finally, of course, if you don't have armor and you don't have health, then at least you should have concealment. But this thing doesn't have concealment either. So ultimately, you don't really have enough effective HP to do anything. I mean, 12.7 km concealment on a paper cruiser. I mean, when I mean paper, I mean as in paper armor. I mean, a Missouri can ambush you. A Missouri with stealth build has 12.2 km stealth, as I'm running here. So a Missouri can literally spot you 500 meters before you spot him. And considering he can overmatch your bow, your deck, everything pretty much, a Missouri will absolutely shit on this thing. Even a Montana going full stealth build reaches 13.4 km concealment. So reaching 12.7 when you're spec'd for stealth, which you kind of have to do because it's so paper, you can't go Moskva like some sort of maneuverability builds because it's just so squishy. So ultimately it doesn't have, this ship lacks, it doesn't really have anything going for it right now. Yes, it has the big guns, but the guns don't deal enough damage, they don't have enough damage per minute. It doesn't have enough armor to withstand hits. It doesn't have enough concealment to be able to actively choose and disengage from fights, like for example the Zhao or the Des Moines. And it just doesn't really have anything going for it. It's still, in my opinion, the worst tier 10 cruiser by far. Absolutely. I mean, I don't really see how you can even argue it. And of course, and this is not even taking into account things like radar, which Moskva and Des Moines have, or the amazing torps that the Zhao and Minotaur have, or Smoke Minotaur has, Hindenburg's YOLO ability, Hindenburg's turtleback. Like, there's so many additional things that these other ships have on top of being just really good ships, on top of being just really good cruisers. And Henry's only real thing is, well, if you sail in a straight line, you go fast, and that's it. And yeah, I mean, fixing the guns so that they're no longer completely broken, that's great, but it doesn't change the fact that this is still a fairly shit ship, sadly. But once again, this is still a work in progress, so we can only hope that Wargaming will soon get the same feedback from some other people, and perhaps no one will try to make more excuses for the ship, and perhaps they will then fix it and it will be a more attractive choice. We can only hope. Anyway, that was all from me. I hope you guys enjoyed it.